Hey guys, welcome to my SOFHAB review series. And this time, Rascal and I are covering another book called Peter Pan and Scarlet.
Yes.
And of course,
hello.
joining me again is Rascal.
Hello again.
Now, this story is a 2006 novel by British author Geraldine McCaughrean. Of course, Jan Berry didn't do it since he's passed some time ago, and she was selected in 2004 following a competition where novelists were invited to submit a sample chapter and plot line for a sequel. So since we did Peter Pan and released it this week for Disney Classics Week, our last one, we thought we'd go ahead and cover this book as well. But
before we start, be sure to like, subscribe, include the notification bell, get released on SOFHAB reviews and many other videos.
Yes, and thank you so much for joining us, for subscribing to all of our channels, for commenting and sharing our videos. We really appreciate you so much.
Yes.
So this book is actually set in 1926, and it continues the story of the Lost Boys, the Darling family, and Peter Pan during the reign of George V and following World War I.
Right. And I think this is where Disney got inspiration from to do the direct-to-DVD sequel for the Disney Peter Pan. Because I know we thought this had something to do with Disney, but no, they had a movie that has some elements from this book. And this book, this Peter Pan Scarlet, is an approved official sequel that they've accepted to be canon as a continuation of the original story. And you could tell that the author tried her best to make it still in the same style or theme of it, but still going forward in time when it's into the regular realm. And there are some things it gets right and some things not so much.
Right. Now, the illustrations are done by Scott M. Fischer. The illustrations on the front of the book, as well as various versions in other countries that are different, some artwork you've seen online, and the little silhouette pictures that are in the book as well. And it was, again, released in October of 2006. And the first United Kingdom printing had 30,000 copies with a limited edition of 1,500 for ones that had a special collectible or book. And the characters that return, as we mentioned, are ones that we're familiar with in the Peter Pan movie and the first book and play, which it was all adapted from.
Right.
You have Peter Pan, the one and only child, who's now living alone in an abandoned Wendy house.
Right.
And then we go through how each of these original characters, the Darlings, end up returning to Neverland.
Right. And one theme they keep in here is that besides her brothers, they also did bring back some of the lost boys and ended up finding a home. And you see it's been many years since the first book. And they've had lives. Majority of them got married. They've had kids of their own and everything. And once a year, or at least once a month, I believe, I forgot which one, they have their meeting of everything's themed brown. And they sort of act like children in a way when they all meet together, including Wendy. And this is so that they don't forget Neverland. They don't grow up completely, and they can still have access there, so that way they don't completely and utterly forget them, because they claim that when you grow up, you forget Peter Pan. So regardless of how far in lives they are and married with children and jobs and everything, they keep that childlike innocence with them, and they make sure to act like kids in the meeting so it still stays in effect.
Very smart. So we have Wendy, who of course all of them are adults. She has a daughter. We have John Darling, who is,
I think
the son is John.
Oh, I thought that was actually one of the brothers. I'm sorry.
Right.
Oh, it is. Okay.
And he has a resemblance to the dad, George.
Okay.
And we have Toodles, who's an adult, who's a portly judge, and has a mustache. And in order to get to Neverland, he's got to dress like a girl because all he's got are girls.
Right.
And you've got Curly Darling, who decides to return to Neverland. You've got Slightly Darling.
Right. That's all the, like you said, the Lost Boys.
Yes. And then you got the first and second twin Darlings, and they're grown up, and they live next door to each other in London. Each the father of twin boys.
Right.
And then Nibs Darling, who's grown up to work in an office. So those are the characters we're familiar with from the first story. And then you have a few new ones that come in.
Right. And I think that's probably one of the best things they have done in this story, of having a very believable version of these characters grown up. And as you said, they have new characters added in when they go to Neverland and they are returned to their child form like they were in the first book, which is another really clever thing. And they have this new character. I know it's supposed to be like a beast tamer. I think it's Ravolio. Is that what's his name? I have to remember because they added quite a few. Ravello. They added some new fairies besides Tinkerbell. Fire.
Tongue twister. Fire.
Who's like actually a different fairy from Tinkerbell's.
Like a blue fairy.
Right. And I think some other characters that are like not technically Lost Boys, but you kind of consider them that.
Shmi and Starkey return.
Right.
So
right. And some of Hook's old crew members that are kind of on their own now that Hook was gone. And you don't really find out what happened to him until towards the end of the book.
Right.
And the main reason they're there is to find out what's happened with Peter Pan and Neverland. It seems like something has gone wrong, and Peter has been acting very differently. Like, yes, we know canonically he acts selfish and of a jerk because he's very immature. However, in here, he's acting a little worse than usual. He's having no common sense. And they're trying to figure out what's happening. Something's got to be off in the land. So they go on this little journey across Neverland to find whatever the Never Tree, which we found out is a real thing in Peter Pan. It wasn't something Disney came up with. And they think that there's something wrong with the tree that's making everything in Neverland go kind of haywire because they see that people are getting a little slightly older, which I kind of thought they just age slowly. That makes more sense to me. And they go on the journey with him to find out how to fix the tree so he's restored to normal and the rest of the land is restored to normal.
So in here there are two things that quite don't work out. One is the pacing is slow.
Yeah.
And unfortunately that makes it kind of hard to stay with to read. It gets kind of boring at times, and it's not for lack of imagination. It's just the pacing is too slow and drawn out.
Right.
And I wish it had a faster pace to make you more interested in staying with it. Because I personally had to keep going back to the book after doing other things or reading things because once I would get through a couple of chapters, it was so slow I wanted to go to something else.
Right, that's true.
And the second thing is the disappointment in how Peter turns out. I really wanted some fantastical, wonderful, unexpected ending, but unfortunately that's not what we get at the end of this book.
And I feel like, without giving spoilers in case you are interested in reading this book, is that even for me, I kind of expect a new ending to be done, like something similar to the fashion of Robin Williams' Hook movie. And other things were like, well, what if Peter actually decided to grow up? And majority of the tellings, he does stay a kid. And we get that part of the legend and the lore is that he's the child that never grew up. But there are sometimes you wonder what would happen in a take where he does decide to actually leave Neverland. What would be the actions like after he's gone? How will that land turn out? How would he go back to living amongst regular people? And unfortunately, you don't really get that in here. It was an interesting idea that they played around with the idea that he did actually miss his original home and he considered going back home at one point. You found out why he never went. And I think that's something that really no other version has touched on or went through with, and they really missed out on here. I guess in case they decided let's do a trilogy book or something.
And the last thing I found disappointing is that when you see the front of the American book, he's got this brocade red coat.
The Scarlet.
And you can tell looking at it, it's not Hook's coat. And you were kind of disappointed because you thought it would be Hook's coat. And I think it's supposed to be.
I think
why
it is.
Put all the brocade on it because that's not what he wore. It should be just a plain red breast coat with the buttons.
Yeah, and that's funny because that is what it is at some point later in the story, and it does have an effect on him and his behavior the further you get in. So they kind of miss the mark with the cover.
When you look at the UK covers and another, it looks like Hook's coat.
Right, so go figure.
So there's an adaptations of this book. A radio adaptation was broadcast on BBC shortly after release on October 14th in 2006, and it had all of the characters being voiced with music composed by David Pickvance and produced and directed by Celia DeWolf. There was also a stage version of Peter Pan and Scarlet, adapted and directed by Teresa Heskins, and it opened at the New Vic Theater in Newcastle under Lyme in 2016, so 10 years later. And it also had a performance in the Oxford Playhouse in August of that year. And lastly, in 2006, A movie adaptation was announced, produced by a consortium of Headline Pictures, the UK Film Council, and BBC Films. But since then, nobody's heard anything about it.
Yeah, we've never seen a movie based on
and
this.
As of this year, the project status is unknown. But it would be good if they could do it.
Maybe they
because
could,
I think I'd like to see it.
They could do something different from the book, and it'd be the one time you would like to see a little bit of an alteration that would improve from the book rather than detract from it and make it worse.
So if you've read Peter Pan and Scarlet, let us know in the comments below. Did you read it when it first came out? Or much later like we have? Tell us what you think. And if you haven't read it, if you're looking for something because you are crushing on Peter Pan, or you just like the franchise, or you just want to see something connected to it that you haven't investigated, then I would say go ahead and give it a read. But again, it's slow paced. Don't expect anything exciting and swashbuckling like the first.
Right.
But it is a good attempt, and I applaud them for trying to stick with the actual plot line and storyline of the original.
Right.
And I don't think there's anything wrong with them having done this.
Right. And if you haven't already, be sure to like, subscribe, and notification buttons on future SOFHAB reviews and many more types of videos.
And thank you so much for joining us again. We appreciate you so much joining us on all our podcasts and videos on our channels.
Yes.
As always, you are specials. And don't forget to visit Rascal's channel, and she's got a plethora of things.
Yes, thank
including
you.
This weekend beginning her fanfic rewrite of the Wish movie.
Yes,
which is going to be awesome. I can tell you, I've read some of the chapters, and you are going to be just
yay,
ecstatic,
hooray,
and happy, and wanting more. And last but not least, if there's anything you want us to cover, whether it be more Disney or anime or so, what others in manga, let us know in the comments below here or on our Pause channel or even on Rascal's video channel.
So,
thanks so much for watching. I'm Julie.
And I'm Rascal. Have a toontastic day.
Continue to be happy, healthy, whole, and also wonderful, my specials. See you next time.